So, Mythcon was yesterday. If you're not familiar, it was originally just like an atheism conference, and they would have debates and discussions. It's like a single day thing in Milwaukee, where I am. And last year, I believe they added Sargon, which brought in like this SJW versus anti-SJW thing. And this year, they have an updated mission statement, and it's much more about, confronting ideologies and skepticism in general, which brought us to a lot of the culture war stuff. I ended up speaking there. I wasn't actually scheduled. I wasn't featured or anything. Just kind of happened. But what I want to talk about today is what we believe to have been a bomb threat and what this means and, what's going on with the culture war and just the absolute authoritarian, pathetic behavior that we see from people who have no good ideas and can't do anything about it other than try and just destroy everything. So I'll give you a quick summary first, and then I'll tell you the full story of what happened in a second. Basically, cops came in with dogs. People got evacuated. We stood outside for a little while. The organizers told everybody to go get food, and we'll come back. And then eventually let us back in. Now I ended up speaking, and this threat came on my panel. Okay, there was a panel called "Is Social Commentary Displacing the Influence of Mainstream News?" Chris Raygun was supposed to speak. I had no intention of being a speaker here. I wasn't even a featured guest or anything. I just was going to come down and just. There's a big group of people who will come see what's going on, but I didn't want to have any official involvement necessarily. But when I heard that Chris Raygun missed his flight, unfortunately, I went over to one of the organizers and I said, hey, I could absolutely talk about this if you've got an opening. And he goes, oh, yeah, Bunty was going to do it. Hey, Bunty, Tim wants to take your spot. And I was like, oh, no, I don't want to take... I didn't realize, Bunty was already doing it. But Bunty's was super cool. He was like, no, yeah, that makes way more sense. Tim, you should definitely do it. And I was like, you sure? I didn't want to bump him or anything like that. But I ended up speaking. And so I'm on a panel about... we're talking about how the mainstream media is being displaced, some of the problems they're facing. And, one of the things I said, basically, is that they're like Blockbuster Video. And they're smearing us, they're coming after us, and all these really awful things because they're thrashing about in the water amidst all these layoffs. It's not working out. So this particular panel, in my opinion, we were all kind of in agreement. You had, it was me, it was, I believe, Stephen Knight is his name, Claire Lehman of Quillette, Jeremy Hambley. And we're all basically like, yeah, we're slowly displacing, mainstream news. And I brought up a bunch of reasons why that's actually a bad thing in some ways. Like local news is dying, and that means local reporters who serve as a check on local corruption are going away with that. So that there are some issues. But this was the one where we all kind of agreed the mainstream was bad. And it's interesting because we've recently had this, attack from several mainstream sources who uncritically are passing around this ridiculous conspiracy theory about the alternative influence network. I'm going to address that probably in full again and do a bigger takedown, not just of that, but the organization itself. And I don't want to give out too much, so stick around maybe on Tuesday when I'm back back home on the East Coast. But look, the mainstream media is coming after us. They've been coming after us. They misrepresent PewDiePie and what he did. They targeted Alex Jones, and full disclosure, I'm not a big fan of Alex Jones, and I think a lot of what he does is rather silly, but I don't think he should have been unpersoned from all these platforms. And so naturally, this panel is probably going to piss off a lot of people. I think a lot of people are assuming the threat that came in was because of me. I tweeted that, because of my panel. I tweeted a bomb threat came in during my panel, and people are saying, "Oh, Tim, they don't want to hear what you have to say, and they want to silence you." But I don't think it was necessarily me that made it happen. I think it was the event in general. But there were a lot of panels. So let me just say this: why I think the threat came in. We've seen authoritarian leftists and people pull the fire alarm. The alt-right has also done similar, I don't want to say necessarily similar things, but they have come after events in certain ways. I don't think it's the same necessarily, but there's definitely animosity. But, we've seen fire alarms pulled. We saw what happened with Sargon in London when Antifa, stormed in and started chanting, no alt-right, which is weird because so was Sargon. He was, talking on the stage about how he didn't like the alt-right. Specifically, when they started chanting no alt-right, it was they didn't really know what they were protesting. So I think, basically, they were just coming after the whole event, but I do believe this year was particularly problematic for them, for the SJW types, authoritarian leftists, in that Mythcon actually was able to get people who were self-proclaimed SJWs, intersectional feminists, social justice activists, and academics. Not the most notable necessarily, but some decent some decently known individuals who were there to debate some of these ideas, and that's a problem for a few reasons. There are no rules when it comes to the far left dogma. Personally, there was a debate between Sargon and this guy Richard Carrier. I don't really know much about him, but I do believe there is such thing as good social justice. Sargon disagreed, but I think for whatever you want to call social justice, we can call it something else. We can call it like dealing with discrimination, right? We should have a free and open society, equal opportunity. And that means we need to remove hurdles to that equal and open opportunity, of which we do have laws protecting a lot of people, but there are still some circumstantial, institutional situations that can arise. I don't know if identity politics is the answer, but I do believe there can be such thing as good social justice. And ultimately, Sargon and Carrier agreed at the end that they were only arguing semantics. Here we had, on stage, a man defending social justice, a man calling social justice bad, and then realizing they actually agreed on a lot of issues and felt SJWs, specifically, are a problem. When you can get a prominent social justice activist to sit next to Sargon of Akkad and say, social justice extremism is really bad, this is a problem for those extremists. So I'm not surprised that a bomb threat was called in. So basically what happened was, we're up on stage, we're all talking, and, I'm ranting about the media and how angry I am, and ragging on people for being liars, as I typically do. When they started telling us, like, hey, pick it up, we gotta go. And then once they're like, okay, yeah, we're gonna wrap it up here, we're not taking any more questions, all of a sudden, Emily, she's like, hey, come here, because she's taking photos at the event. And I'm like, what's going on? She's like, hey, something's going on, we gotta go. And then my brother and Emily jump up on stage, and they're like, go. And I'm like, whoa, what's happening? And all of a sudden, they announce, like, everybody, you have to leave now. We were gonna do dinner in an hour, everybody has to go now. And so everybody starts leaving, we go outside, and then my brother's like, go, like, hurry. Like, he's like, I don't want to say he's telling me, like, run, but he was like, come on, like, go. And the police are like, everybody, you got to cross the streets now, move. I see all these, like, police cars and tape is being set up, they're surrounding the building. My brother told me that, everyone's in the green room, which is basically like the basement. It's a green room, if you're not familiar, it's like where the talent and speakers, like, hang out before the event. And he said that cops came down with a dog, and everybody was like, what's going on? And the cop didn't do anything, and then all of a sudden was like, okay, guys, everybody out, and the dog started sniffing. And my brother said that he asked someone, like, what's going on? And he said, don't worry, they're just sniffing for explosives. And they were like, And my brother was saying, like, maybe people were worried the dogs were sniffing for drugs. So it's like telling people that it was explosives chilled everybody out. I don't think anybody had drugs, but I don't know, apparently it was like one of the security guys who are like, they're here to do this. The security guys actually had authority over the entire event, meaning the security guys were the ones who were essentially coordinating what we could or couldn't do, and then the police were like, this is what's happening. So when we came back, it was security that had to clear the space. The organizers couldn't even go in until security cleared it. So we all go out, we're all standing across the street, and a bunch of people start leaving, and that's when I asked one of the organizers. They said it was a non-specific threat. However, there were, with the dogs going down there to sniff, and basically what happened was when the police first came in, they did nothing. They were just like, yeah, it's fine, don't worry about it. And apparently, excuse me, somebody was saying that nothing was really going to happen. The cops were just there. It was like a courtesy or something. But then all of a sudden, something happened where they're like, okay, we got to get everybody out now. And so the only speculation that I can have, and why we think it was a bomb threat, or it may have been a non-specific threat, but the dogs alerted the police to something. And if it was drugs, I don't think the police would evacuate people. The dogs, I think, we were told they were sniffing for explosives. Something happened where they decided to just get everybody out of the building, and they put police tape around the whole block. Like, you can't walk here. It was nuts. And then eventually we were all let back in. For obvious reasons, it was like a BS threat. So deplatforming, does it work? Technically, no. Of course it can in some circumstances, but ultimately I don't believe it does, because banning someone like Alex Jones, all you've done is isolated him, and it's basically like, let's say people who watch Alex Jones believe things they shouldn't. I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this right now probably like Alex Jones. But the point is, you have an opportunity as someone on Twitter to see what Jones has to say and then see how people respond to him. And that can help you find a balanced view. Deplatforming him isolates him, doesn't get rid of his audience, it just limits exposure to other ideas, and the people who like Alex Jones will keep watching him, so it's a really bad idea in my opinion. Deplatforming is the tactic of those who have nothing else to do. And what I mean by that is they have no tactics. They've lost. This is what it means. They've literally lost. They're thrashing about in the water. Why is the media smearing people like me and trying to accuse us of being extremists? Because they're losing. And they're thrashing about desperately, unsure what to do. And so deplatforming is the only thing they can do. I can't win with an argument. I have no good ideas. Shut them down. Shut them down. And that's what happens with an event like this. Anybody who wants to call a threat to shut an event down, it's not because there's, it's like, the reason they're doing it is because they're completely desperate and what's going on there is bad for them and they can't do anything else. So this is what I see, a complete and desperate act that's only going to backfire, only going to create more of a more PR. You've got now people talking about what's going on. And this is shining a bigger light on what's happening with Mythcon. And they did that. And that was stupid. Just let the people speak and ignore them. And if it's not a good idea, it doesn't go anywhere. And what you're doing with deplatforming just won't work. So anyway, I just wanted to address it and talk about what happened. I've got some tweets pulled up, but I basically summarized it all anyway. So stick around. I've got 2 more videos coming up, and I'll see you in just a few minutes.